So for today's video, I wanted to celebrate being back on track with the carnivore diet for 24 hours. I also wanted to take this opportunity to talk about food addiction and a little bit of my experience with it and just why 24 hours back on any program is significant. If you don't know me, my name is Echo and I create content about how an everyday average person can work through their struggles and all of their problems, put in the work, and get great results. So let's get to work. 24 hours, why is 24 hours a big deal? So 24 hours might not sound significant. Like in reality, 24 hours is not a lot of time. So why am I creating a video celebrating 24 hours? Well, I am creating the video to celebrate 24 hours because I have been stuck in this loop where I have started over every day, where I have spent basically since October 14th until, so basically I have spent a month telling myself today is the day. Every night before I went to bed, I would tell myself tomorrow is going to be the day. And then I would wake up and in the morning I would be like, today is the day. Today is going to be the day you do it. And you know what happened? Something would happen during the day. I would mess up and it would go back to, well, tomorrow is going to be the day. And I would tell myself this over and over again. I basically did it for a month. I kept trying, and I kept failing. The longer it went, the worse I felt about myself. The more I felt I'm never going to be able to pull myself together. I'm never going to make things work. And all of that changed when I watched a movie. And the movie actually had a scene where somebody was attending AA. And when they were attending, they were celebrating their first 24 hours. And that was a momentous moment for me. Yes, I know it was a movie, and I have heard celebrate your 24 hours before with people trying to overcome addiction. And food is an addiction, and I am going to talk about that today. But to think of the day in terms of 24 hours, it changed my perspective entirely, because when I mess up, I always think tomorrow will be the day. I never think I'm going to start right now. I was always putting stuff off for the future. And so thinking of things in terms of 24 hours really changed the way I thought. And it allowed me to push through and to be like, well, I can make it one more hour. I can make it one more meal. It allowed me to segment my time different, and segmenting my time different and thinking about it in shorter terms made it easier for me to process as a whole. So as I said, the scene that I was watching was a scene that had to do with AA, and thinking of addiction recovery and things in terms of 24 hours or one day at a time is a popular addiction recovery tool. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about how food is an addiction. You can be addicted to sugar. You can be addicted to carbs. And I think a lot of times when I was talking about dieting, this is where I lost people, because I would tell them how I was struggling, and I would tell them that I just can't seem to stick to my diet. And they would be like, well, you know what works for me? I just eat less. And yeah, I can't even process how many times I have heard, well, I started this diet and I really didn't have any problem sticking to it. So I am a chronic dieter. They would give me this advice like I had never heard of it before. They would give me this advice like I hadn't tried that before. Like it was boom, it was revolutionary to me to be like, oh, I only eat while I'm hungry. Oh, I should eat less. And I had already been there. I had tried the smaller plates. I had tried the calorie counting. I had tried all these things that people were suggesting to me, like that was all I needed. And you know what? That wasn't what I needed, because I was coming from 26 years of failed dieting. Like that is where I am coming from. So when I say you can be addicted, and I would have people be like, oh, give me this advice, they did not understand where I was coming from. Because if you have never had a problem with binge eating, you have never been a chronic dieter, you have never had a problem with emotional eating, it's something you just don't understand, and you can't comprehend when somebody says, while I eat all this food. So when I talk about 24 hours being significant, I think I need to let you know where I am coming from on my journey. And I am coming from a place of failed dieting. I wasn't just a failed dieter, I was a chronic dieter. I would go through periods of binging and restricting, and that was the pattern that I followed for when I think about it, that is the pattern that I followed for most of my life. I was the type of person, I would walk into a store, I would plan to eat, and I would go in with a list, and I would pretend that I was ordering for multiple people. Like I would literally write down people's names, and then I'd be like, oh, did I get this? And I would pretend that I was taking this food to share with other people, mainly because I was embarrassed at the quantities that I was ordering. I would do all that. I would eat literally till the point I was sick. And I don't mean like, oh, I feel sick. I mean to the point where I am hugging a toilet bowl, not because I feel guilty for having eaten stuff, but because that was the natural conclusion of there is so much in your stomach, something is going to come out one of your ends. And that is a terrible way to put it, but that I have spent time laying on the floor next to a toilet and telling myself I am never going to do this again. And knowing that I feel terrible, that my body feels terrible, that I am through the emotional ringer, and still doing it. But I did. I did it again, and I did it over and over for years. I have treated food like my best friend. I have treated food like a comfort. At terrible times in my life, I have treated food like a punishment, where I would just eat and eat and eat until I felt physically ill. And then I would tell myself, you know what, you pig, you deserve this. And I believed everything I was telling myself. And the problem with food and thinking of food as an addiction, when somebody else has an addiction to something, like if somebody else has an addiction to a substance, normally you can distance yourself from whatever you have an addiction to with, whatever you have a problem with. You can say, you know what, I'm quitting that from today on. I'm not going to do that anymore. And with food, it is completely different, because I can't just say, I'm never going to eat food again. Like, you can say it. I have said it before. I have tried juice fasts like that, like that would help. But food is something essential to life. You can't tell yourself, I'm never going to have it again, that I'm never going to be in a situation where it's not around me. Because food, especially when you're dieting, I like to think of, we don't live in a bubble, and everywhere you go, people who do not have this problem have no problem being like, well, just one cookie is not going to make that big of a difference. You know what? That one cookie wouldn't make that big of a difference, but it's what that one cookie does to me that makes the biggest difference. It's how it affects me mentally that makes that big of difference. And people don't think twice before they say, oh, well, if you're at a party or at, like, with the holidays coming up, to be like, well, you could have just one slice of cheesecake and then tomorrow you can go back to where you were before. So if you have been in a situation like that where you have shared your feelings and your thoughts on food and they have dismissed it or they just didn't get it, it's because they didn't understand. They don't understand that food can be an addiction, that it can affect you emotionally and physically, and that you can make decisions because of food that are irrational. Like I have skipped out on parties. I have missed friends' weddings. I have canceled at last minute because while I was driving somewhere, I made a trip through the drive-thru and I wanted to just sit in my car and eat that food. And somebody who has never done that has never been in a situation where they do that. They do not understand why somebody would do that. So I am saying 24 hours is significant. If you are trying to get back on track, 24 hours is a big deal. And so I am making a video about it. I am talking about it, about how that first step back is an important step to make. How did my first 24 hours actually go? So my first 24 hours, I decided that I was going to eat food that I knew I liked. So I had lots of bacon cheddar meatballs, and I went to McDonald's and got some meat cookies. Even though I was eating stuff I knew that tasted good, that I knew I liked, I was still constantly most of the day telling myself, you can make it. You can make it. This is your day. This is your hour. This is, and just telling myself, and I had to constantly remind myself that it was important for me to make it through this 24 hours, that I wanted to make it through the 24 hours, because there were times during the 24 hours, believe it or not, as short as 24 hours is, where I was like, no, I don't want to make it through 24 hours. And I was telling myself, I can start tomorrow. I can. It was constantly talking myself through and being like, that's what you said yesterday, and just telling myself that I needed to work through it, that this food was good, that if I continued to do this, that I knew the effects were good, that I knew my body would feel better, that my back would feel better, that my feet wouldn't hurt in the morning. And I told myself, if you want to feel better, then you need to do this. And just kept working through it. Like every time it came up, I basically had to talk myself down, and I was almost like, you know what? I really do need a sponsor, somebody to call and say, I am trying to get back on track, and I want pizza. I want, all these things. It was a lot of work, and it was a lot of just mentally telling myself that I could do this, that I could make it through, that 24 hours was going to be the start that I needed to help me keep going. Now that this 24 hours is behind me, I know that the next 24 hours will be easier. And I know that if I keep thinking of it as one day at a time, or if I keep segmenting my time to be small and thinking I can do the next meal, I can do the next snack, I can do the next couple of hours, if I keep thinking of time that way, that it will be easier for me to manage in the long run, that it will be easier for me to see time add up. So thank you for watching this video. If you are trying to get back on track, just remember that 24 hours can start at any time of the day. You can, like what I did, I looked over at the clock and I was like, okay, my 24 hours is going to start now. So I remember at 9:47 in the morning is when I started my 24 hours. And if you have been in a situation similar to this, where you have fallen off the dieting bandwagon and struggled to get back on, what worked for you? Because the more you can hear what worked for other people, the more you can try and find out what works for you. Once again, my name is Echo. Thank you for watching. Thank you for celebrating my first 24 hours with me, for sharing in this journey. It makes me feel not so alone, and maybe if you're in the same situation, you're not alone either. If any part of my story sounds familiar to you, please like and subscribe so that you can follow me on my journey as I get my act together and get my life in order. Thank you for watching. Until the next time, bye.